All right, mandatory minicamp practice number 2 is in the books. I can't remember the last time it was that hot out. Like, I know training camp is always that hot, but I was like, can I please get a PJ's iced coffee like now? Number one, to stay awake after being in the sun all day. But it looked like some of the players were hurting too with some of the heat. But we have all of our camp number 2 observations in today's episode.
No, it was definitely blazing out there, just like we're going to be blazing through this podcast today, because there is a lot of stuff to cover. And for everything we don't cover on this podcast, make sure you get over to NewOrleans.Football. Use the code Father's Day for 20% off your first payment. And we have all your coverage of the Saints all season long, every single day. Never any days off with us. So if you need legal help with any of the following, make sure you check out Better Call Bado. They cover you in car wrecks, offshore injuries, 18-wheeler collisions, maritime and Jones Act, hurricane and storm claims. You better call Bado at 504-323-7777 or 985-303-7777 for your free consultation and case review. And of course, we are coming to you from the Better Call Bado podcast studio. And while you're out and about, make sure you get to a PJ's Coffee. They got locations all over the city. They have the best coffee, the best pastry, so make sure you check them out. And if you need to get groceries or wire money or anything like that, go to Ideal Market. They are home of the freshest produce in the city. They are doing great work in the community. Always bring the best quality food products at the best prices, in the home of the largest variety of Hispanic and international foods you will find in the state. They have a hot deli that surpasses like many restaurants in the flavor of their authentic Hispanic dishes. And get yourself a bottle of Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey. That is an 86 proof blend of aged wheat bourbon, American light whiskey, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries blended in New Orleans. It is not for the thin-skinned. Look for it in your favorite stores, bars, and restaurants. And last but not least, check out Firehouse Subs, Veteran Boulevard location. Great people doing great things for the community. All right, let's get into the show.
All right, we viewed our second practice of mandatory minicamp. Something's definitely changed after the first practice, which I think answered a lot of our questions. One of those being, it seems like Paulson, Adebo, and Alontae Taylor are going to rotate in and out with the ones at that left cornerback position. Not as so much, it's just on Alontae to earn that job. He wasn't the one with the ones on the first day. Mm-hmm. Paulson was, but I think maybe it will be, and we'll be able to tell when we see this third practice. Or are they rotating in and out each day, right?
Yeah. This is the season of overreaction. Yeah. So everything you see gets overreacted to because there's nothing to build it upon. So we're seeing something, we're reacting to it. Taysom throwing passes on day one is like the biggest headline of the day. Day two, he's not really doing much of that. Paulson Adebo's the starter on day one. Day two, Alontae Taylor's the starter. That's the value of this window as opposed to OTAs, is that by the end of it, you do have at least 3 practices, 6 total that you've seen. Yeah. And there's at least somewhat of a sample size to at least evaluate some things. But as you're doing it piece by piece in real time, everything feels like a bigger deal than it is. But yeah, I think we're going to see them probably go back and forth like this all through the summer, maybe until like the final training camp practice and the QB battles. That's kind of how it was too, like until after the second preseason game. So if this remains close, I think the door is going to probably be open for quite a while.
Yeah, we talked about it way back on our last show after the first practice of minicamp, where we're like, I was a little curious to know, though, did they give Paulson Adebo your third year and the other guy's second year stature, or did they go right into the every other day rotation? So that's a little notable, but you're right. I was going to throw, if you hadn't thrown the Taysom thing in, I was going to throw that in because it's the exact same thing. Doesn't mean Taysom has moved back to quarterback. It means he's going to practice occasionally at quarterback. And then we saw one today. We saw Andrus Peat at left tackle, James Hurst at left guard. If we'd seen that on the first day, we might have been like, so are they switching these guys? Position change? Is Pete a backup now? But because it happened on the second day, it's like, oh, now they're just rotating.
I don't know. Andrus Peat at left tackle was definitely something I didn't have eyes on it, but when you mentioned it,
well, it was one play
and got it confirmed.
One play of team, which we buried the lead. It was a deep touchdown pass from D.Carr to C.Olave, which was the highlight play. I think of probably the other candidates, another C.Olave touchdown that he went up in a contested catch. But that was it for team with the first team with the whole offensive line out there. It was one snap. But it is interesting in that, I mean, we think Trevor Penning is the left tackle and Andrus Peat is the left guard and James Hurst is the backup. But Andrews Pete spent a lot of time sliding over to left tackle before. The more you can do.
Yeah, I'm with Brooke. I thought it was fascinating.
Yeah.
Actually, because if your left guard is your left guard and your left guard's on the field, he probably should be playing left guard, and now he's playing left tackle.
Well, it means James Hurst is going to have a chance to win that job, and Andrews Pete might become the swingman. Yeah.
Maybe, or it's just, I don't know. I don't know how the pieces are actually going to come together, but yeah, I mean, that's definitely a possibility. It's just fascinating to me that these two guys that you thought would be playing here switch. It could be as simple as just getting them work everywhere, because if there is an injury, maybe Pete does go. But I don't know, man. It seems this is one of those things I'm going to refrain from going into like the big take on one play. Like,
but we would have viewed it a lot differently if we saw it on the first day.
But it is something. It's something for sure that he's playing.
My main takeaway from it is we've all said, I mean, if Trevor Penning is right, he should be the left tackle, first round pick with his talent. And we all thought that means, what is James Hurst now? Could he win the guard? Well, you know how James Hurst wins the left guard job? He's got to be able to compete for it. That's the only one that I think is in play if everyone else is healthy, don't you think? Like, if you've got 5 starters and you're going to give James Hurst a chance to win a starting job, he probably has a better chance of winning a left guard job than a left tackle job.
I've always bought the James Hurst hype too. Like, I don't understand why he's not starting. He's
at left tackle?
No. Well, either more so at left guard if that's something they're talking about, like moving things. James Hurst to me has always been a guy that no one ever had a problem with. Like, he never had a game where anybody was like, oh, he had a bad game. He was somebody that was always super consistent. Andres Pete wasn't always consistent, and that was one thing I just never understood is, what is it going to take for the coaches to see if that James Hurst deserves a spot over Andres Pete? And like, they obviously know a lot more than we do. They see a lot more than the three of us do, but I just never understood that why don't you start James Hurst over Andres Pete?
Well, he's just needed at the other position so much. I mean, that probably is where he would have competed until left tackle became such a screaming need that's where he's played the most in his career. But yeah, he's got as much previous experience at guard as he does at tackle. Yeah.
My one apprehension with having James Hurst on the field over him, though, is if they are going to be a screen team and they want to be a team that runs the ball, like, that is the one thing that Pete does really, really well, is he gets down the field. But look, you got to protect your quarterback too. So, I mean, it's definitely something that I think should be evaluated. Pete's in the last year of his contract. You're not at a place anymore where you're invested in him. If his time's up now as a starter, as opposed to a year from now, then so be it. Like, just get the best guys on the field for sure. And I kind of like, the flip side of that is I kind of like Hurst better inside, because I thought some of his issue was in space as a tackle. I don't think he did a very good job. I don't know that he has like the same range of getting down the field. Like, he could handle the stuff kind of like in his orbit, but it was limited. So maybe that plays a little bit better at guard, and maybe you can hide that a little bit.
He might be the first backup at every position. I mean, that's how we have it penciled in. We're going to do our 53-man roster projections later, and I mean, we think we have a starter at all 5 positions, and I think James Hurst is probably like the number 1 backup at 3 or 4 different positions. But he's got to be able to play him. He hasn't spent, and Andres Pete and Cesar Ruiz, if those guys start 17 games each, it would be shocking, because Pete has missed a ton of time with injuries, and Cesar Ruiz is dealing with a big injury too. So he's got to get that work at someone's expense this year.
Moving back to Taysom Hill, I don't think I ever saw him with the quarterbacks today. I mean, it was very glaring compared to the first practice. Moving on to the second practice, he was with the tight ends the majority of the time. To me, that's just glaring, because that's the opposite of what it was the day before. Could it potentially be like that for every practice now?
I think he's probably just going to move around.
Yeah.
I think there's probably going to be times where he does quarterback stuff. There's times where he does running back stuff. There's times where he does tight end stuff. You see him do special team stuff. I mean, he's just, I don't call him whatever. He's Taysom. Like, he's just going to Taysom it. And, wherever he ends up that day, that's where he ends up. And he'll go there and he'll play and he'll probably do some good things. Seen him catch a couple passes so far. So, I mean, that's something. I do think he needs to become more consistent at that as a tight end. You got to be able to catch the ball. It's not something that he's always been great at, but yeah, I think he's just going to move around.
I've stopped. I'm not going to draw any conclusions from anything I see from Taysom Hill in practice, because last year they made this big to-do about teaching him to play tight end, and they threw like 7 passes to him all year, and he had a career high 96 carries and played more quarterback than he ever did before, other than the games he started and everything. It's just like, it doesn't matter where they practice him. Once it comes to game planning, I think they're gonna do the things that have always worked with him. And Dennis Allen has kind of said that. He got in some hot water last year, I think, by trying to define Taysom Hill's role early in the season. And Dennis Allen kind of backed off of it, like, well, what I meant was, we're gonna do what we've always done with Taysom. And last year they did what they've always done with Taysom. And this year I think they're going to do what they've always done.
I
with
seen
Taysom.
Ryan Nielsen out one time, and it was just, kind of joking around. And we started talking about Taysom. I was like, dude, you got to like try to get him. He's like, man, I've tried. Like, so if you ever saw him rush the passer, like I wouldn't even be surprised by that, because I think he would actually probably be really, really good at that one very specific thing. You give him a seam, he's going to bully his way through it and get through it really quick. So yeah, nothing that would happen with him would surprise me at all.
Michael.Thomas took a step forward in the second practice. He actually brought out, it's not a cone, but it was almost like what you see a kicker tee, but lay it flat in L shape. And I saw him kind of being more aggressive in his cuts. It was very short cuts. I mean, literally looks like an L-shaped cone.
The square edge?
Like, yes, I don't know. Like a square.
Wow.
I tried to look it up, and it's not something I could find. Like,
It's
it
like
literally
Home
looked
Depot
like
level knowledge.
right.
There.
Looked like a.
What aisle is that in, Nick?
But it did. It looked like a kicker tee on its side. But just he did take a step forward today. He was a little bit more aggressive in his cuts. I did see him run a couple routes off to the side with D.Carr. He's still not in team drills, but it does seem like Michael.Thomas has at least made a positive step.
The thing that it's possible he was doing those same drills with the trainer off to the side, because he was still mostly just working with the trainer. But it seemed like there was a very concerted effort for him to do all his work right next to the receivers while they were doing their work in each individual drill. So the last two times we saw Michael.Thomas, he left during individual drills and then came back out. And today he never left the field, and we were seeing him do those. And he was doing it like, and then when he wasn't doing his drill, he was watching the receivers do their drill and almost like shadowing them. So this is just now the third example of we're seeing a very concerted public effort to be like, I am all in trying to be part of this team. Like, for whatever his motivation is, we're seeing more and more that he's showing it to us.
The interesting thing with the work they're doing, it's like they have the route of the day. Like every single day, it's like they're working on like one specific route. There were fades. One day it was slants. One day they kind of hit like the whole tree. Today it was quick out. So like to have the little L thing out there, like if you're out there kind of doing it, I mean, that's how you want to take it and cut it. Mike was cutting with like so much violence. There was one play, I think, when we were both standing over there, like it was a bad throw and he missed it and he didn't make the catch and he
and you heard him,
yeah, but like he jumped, like he leaped.
You thought it was a bad throw?
I don't know if it was a bad throw or mistimed.
I feel like a healthy Michael.Thomas, there's no issue with that catch radius.
He had to leave his feet.
Yeah.
But he left his feet though. And that was my takeaway from it.
Him yelling was yelling at himself though, not at Carr, for sure.
But he got up quick. And like that, I was just like, oh damn, like your ankle, you can jump like that. There's some spring there. So that was like a good moment for me watching him, like, is his health like, oh, okay, like he's doing something here. So I like watching that every day. Like it's very fun to watch him just do the same route over and over and over and over. And it starts out at one place and then you got Carr and him, they do their powwow and they're talking to each other and you see the hand signaling. And then like by the end, it's just like boom, 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 boom. And everything's just so on point. So it's been cool to see. I like having Mike back out there. It's exciting. I hope everything works out for him.
Another thing I thought was really notable today is, so then in the second special teams session, it's the three quarterbacks, Michael.Thomas and Alvin Kamara, who also wasn't doing any special teams. And he's like, I'll do this too. And because we were dissecting what is Alvin doing on the field, what's his body language, they spent that session with D.Carr and him working over routes. He went and ran it, and then he'd come back and they'd talk about it or whatever. And all those same things we've been seeing D.Carr do ad nauseum. Now he's doing it with Alvin Kamara. And then Jamal Williams and Demario Davis came over, and it's like, wait, are we having a second practice over here? What's going on?
So before Alvin came over, I was over there too. C.Olave actually was pulled by Ronald Curry, which I thought was interesting. I can't remember the last time I saw Ronald Curry grab a wide receiver off from the side who was just, I think it was during a water break while the special team was doing their thing. Pulls C.Olave over. Olave puts the helmet back on. He's pointing to Olave, not like communicating with a quarterback through Olave, just Ronald Curry to Olave, ran a couple routes, and then he went back over. But I just thought that was interesting because I'm not sure I've seen that often.
Yeah. Look,
usually it's Cody Burns that's working with him.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. Any extra work they're getting though over there is cool. Look, I'm all in on C.Olave right now. I think he's had an outstanding camp.
He had a hell of a day.
Outstanding day. Every single practice, though. It's every single practice. I think you can clearly see his game going to the next level. I tweeted today just like I would buy all the stock on him, even if it required a hostile takeover. Because like it's just, I think he's like that good and it's that sure that he's gonna have that kind of season. And you see just everything. It's the evolution. Like you're watching it, and it's there's just nothing really to criticize about his game based on what we've seen. I'm sure there'll be some valleys at some point, but I don't know when they're coming. He had a great catch over the middle earlier in practice, and then he had that one down the sideline. Best play at camp probably so far. Was it a 2-minute drill, or were they just driving from the 20? Whatever it was, they needed one play down the sideline.
No, it was supposed to be
Alontae
a whole 2-minute drill, and it ended in one play. And Jake Hayner's 2-minute drill also ended in one play when A.Taylor returned an interception. But Jameis's was a full 2. The second team actually got like 7 plays in. That was a 2-minute drill. The other 2-minute drills were both one play only.
But yeah, the Olave play, go route up the side over Alontae touchdown. Like, it was just, that's it. And it was a contested throw. Like, we're seeing him do everything you want to see him do. And I just think he's just going to take off this year for sure.
I even saw him on just the routes on air, him extending for a catch. I think I was standing next to you. Actually, I might have been by myself. I'm not sure where you both were, but he just routes on air extending to just make that catch. Like, just little things. The way that he gets out of his breaks has been the biggest surprise for me, is that just, I don't know if the weight or what he did this offseason helped. He always has looked very sharp in his routes, but this year I'm like, as soon as he gets the ball and like makes the move, I'm like, all right, we got to see this on the field.
Well, D.Carr made that point that he said C.Olave, I think the question was, what do you like most about him, almost as a receiver, but he said the thing he likes about him is how demanding he is on himself. And he said even when he caught a pass in the end zone, he was like wishing he had caught it better. And like when it and he said that's how he is with every catch. He goes, even if it's my fault and I didn't put the throw in the place, he's like, yeah, but I wanted to catch it. Like, so that goes in line with that. 2 other points. Hostile Takeover fresh in your mind because you watched the Blackberry movie? Is that
that movie was outstanding. Absolutely. Yeah.
And we got to give Ronald Curry a little love. We gave Sterling Moore all that. He could still play love. Yesterday, Ronald Curry was running the receiver routes as the receiver for the quarterbacks, who's still got a little bit of that too.
Man, Sterling's different though. Sterling is different.
Yeah, and Ted Ginn's really been an asset for this group. I was trying to get better eyes on him in the second practice after finding out that he was there in the first practice, and he's working off with everybody that's fighting for a job. I mean, it was after every route he's there, like, hey, you need to do this with your hips, your hands, your feet. And Dennis Allen actually spent a lot of time over by the wide receivers when they were going the drill where they have to like kind of crouch down and go underneath the,
it's like a limbo bar almost, yeah,
something like that. There's probably a technical term, I'm just not thinking of it. The shoots, there we go. Brandon with the clutch call. But so that's what they were going under, and Dennis Allen was almost like crouched down and watching right there. I mean, there's some stiff competition, and for me, we've talked about A.T. Perry. I need to see more from him if he's going to make the roster. There was a few like hustle plays that I would have liked to see him make, and I don't know what it is. Like, the heat is getting to him. He's from Florida, so I don't know what it is, but to me, it's he's not making the right steps. He's just kind of like stayed at even, and I think if he wants to make the roster, he needs to take that step.
I wonder if Ted Ginn Jr.'s advice is just run like a 4.240. Why don't you just run faster?
Sure.
That's what I always did.
Yeah, I mean, AT definitely does look like worn out there. Like, by the end of practice, it was just kind of, even people going into the huddle, it was just kind of lingering back and going a little bit. He won't be the first or the last person to get bit by the heat here. And
it was tough out there.
Yeah, sometimes it takes guys a little bit to get used to it and bounce back. But yeah, I just think the consistency overall, though, and as a 6th-round pick, yeah, he's a name. He's a lot of people saw him in the 3rd round, but you're a 6th-round pick. You aren't guaranteed anything with that draft status. So you got to go out, you got to prove it. And it's tough to be the guy that's battling through it a little bit as someone that does need to prove their worth to make the team. So I'm with Brooke. I got to see more before I'm all bought in on the hype. We've seen some highlights, but the highlights aren't enough. There needs to be consistent highlights. And I don't know that we've seen that quite yet.
It's funny enough that you mentioned that. People being beat by the heat before. I think the all-time classic, well, there's 2. Andrews Pete really struggled his rookie year, and we all saw that.
And that was in Virginia.
But one that we...
That wasn't the heat.
Oh, man. Poor,
He's just out of shape.
We don't need to be hard on Andrews. He came around. He found his position. He carved out a nice career.
It's 58 degrees in the morning.
But we were all watching him because he was a 1st-round pick. The most famous example that people tell legendary stories of how Marcus Colston was going to have to quit football. They were like, he was out of shape. He got hurt every time he was out there. They said they didn't think he was going to make it. And he told us when he came in studio with us that he was like, I thought he was going to get cut after rookie camp or whatever. We weren't paying that close of attention to him since he was the 7th-round pick or whatever. He figured it out, but it's funny that's the comparison that came to my mind because Colston had made that comp. They had the same college receiver coach. They both were drafted around the same spot. So hopefully,
Yeah,
that's
come
just
on,
the
AT.
beginning of the the great story.
Yeah, I will. I mean, that heat is. And I think offense was in black uniforms today. So.
No, we see it on your forehead.
Oh, thank you. And
Yes.
just you have some redness in
No,
your
no,
cheeks.
that's
You do. It's
just-
okay.
no.
Brandon agrees. Brandon's over there. I see you. All right. Did you guys notice any difference in the running backs in the second practice compared to the first practice?
Alvin's the best receiver on the team.
Yeah.
No, that's not true because of C.Olave. But look, I'm a broken record at this point. I mean, we've talked about how do you get all three running backs on the field.
Mm-hmm.
How does Pete Carmichael Jr. rediscover what this offense is good at? How do you get Alvin unlocked again? Throw him the ball like that. I mean, we saw it yesterday on short passes, then we see a wheel route that in 7-on-7 that he takes to the house. And it's just like, I know Alvin's lost a step. I know it's year 7. I know a lot of it is running back mileage is different, but
He's so
let's remember why
explosive.
he's so damn
Yeah.
special and make that a big part of this
Yeah.
offense again.
He's just still so explosive. I mean, his lower body strength is.
Yeah.
I mean, we watched it.
Yeah. Best thing today for me was just where he was lined up. They had him split out. We didn't see him split out last year. I was just on a year-long rant about how he wasn't getting split out, and he was making plays from out there. He had one down the field. It would have been the play of the day, as you mentioned, if it wasn't for Olave. And just plays where he wasn't targeted. He was outside. Like, you're being creative. You're thinking about it now. Maybe it doesn't mean anything long-term, but if that's part of the minicamp plan, it makes me think that you're thinking about it. You're getting him out there. It's going to be a priority. It needs to be a priority. If he's going to be on this team and be effective, use him in that multifaceted role. He can become that weapon, fill around the other guys, and there's ways for everybody to eat. But if it's static and boring and uncreative, and you're using Alvin just as a between the tackles guy and not splitting him out, using him as a receiver, it's not going to work. So that needs to be part of the game. And he showed us today why it needs to be part of the
one
game.
that I loved yesterday, again, small sample size. And it's funny, once we get 20 practices under our belt, we don't even put 7-on-7 under a microscope anymore because then the team is more important than everything. But,
that's still under a microscope.
Yeah, I know, but still, but you know what I mean? Like
teams on the dissection table. Yeah.
But 7-on-7 yesterday, Alvin was split out wide, and then D.Carr calls an audible, looks over, moves him into the slot, and then he runs that route. And D.Carr didn't throw to him on that play. But just that alone I thought was great. I'm like, Alvin's out wide, and then D.Carr motioned him into the slot. Like, I don't know if that was designed in the play or if D.Carr was testing out some audibles or whatever. But I'm like, even that I feel like I haven't seen in forever.
Like you're out there, you're like, oh, well, would you look at that?
Yeah, we'll see if it translates. But maybe Pete Carmichael's gotten a wild hair and is getting back to his creative side.
Well, look, when we complained a lot about Pete Carmichael Jr. last year, there were 3 players that stood out above all the others that we thought he could have used better: Alvin Kamara, Taysom Hill, and Rashid Shaheed. And in a matter of 4 weeks, we kind of like, oh, look, maybe they're going to be more creative with how they're using Taysom Hill. Oh, look, maybe they're going to be more creative how they're using Alvin Kamara. And a couple weeks ago, before Rashid Shaheed suffered a minor injury that's taken him off the field, we liked the way they're showing a lot more versatility in how they're using him, and including the slot and some things closer to the line of scrimmage. So hopefully they got the memo.
Yeah, versatility, creativity, all things that we want to hear in relation to Pete Carmichael, because let's be honest, it just was not a fun offense to watch last year. And I think adding D.Carr in is going to help that. Nick even had the throw charts to show just how he can be dynamic and get the ball to any position on the field. So I think with that, we're going to, and Carr is working like diligently on every single pass with every either wide receiver, tight end, or running back. If they didn't hit it right there, I mean, he's backing up what he said in OTAs. He is defining and fixing every little thing. And he does expect you to go over there with him on the other field when special teams rolls out.
Yeah, look, it's not even on fun offense. It was like horrible offense. So
Sad.
So
It was sad.
Yeah, please be different. Please, like, just put Alvin on the outside. Please, like, throw him some passes out there. Let him run out and up. Like, first game of his career, like Sean Adam doing that. Like, put him on some of these. He can run receiver routes. Like, just do it. Like, give D.Carr. He wants it too. Called him an amazing route runner.
Yeah.
Just let him run routes and throw him the ball. Like, this isn't that hard. Just give the ball to Taysom. Like, I'm sure it's more complicated, but it really isn't. Like, if you make an effort to get him the ball on the outside, you can get him the ball on the outside. So just go do it. They're showing us it. Hopefully they stick with it.
There's enough guys to get the ball to as well to have a unique and creative offense. I think that's definitely the case. Moving over.
If Alvin hits and Thomas is healthy, like, D.Carr is going to be.
And C.Olave, who you
He should be
don't have any money
pumped,
left
about
to
being
buy
the
stuff.
quarterback in this offense. You have a healthy offensive line too.
he's going to have a bad NFC. I'm not going to go there, but in the bad NFC, like there's going to be a lot of hype behind this gentleman if these people are playing.
And
they're
Jawan
playing
Johnson,
well.
who I've been hyping up too. There are weapons in this offense.
Like he could be the best quarterback in the NFC. Like if these dudes are all healthy, like up there, at least in that conversation, like for real, like they could elevate him.
Sure.
And look, we've said this a million times. Where you rank all these pieces, give me the healthy offensive line. I would almost take that as the thing I want most. You know, then they can do the things they want to do. Because when the offense got really, really sad, is when it was like, well, it doesn't matter if we run or pass; it's not going to work.
I don't know. Give me a healthy Mike, man. That can hide some injured, that can hide injured offensive lineman. He's open on a slant in like 1.8 seconds. Like you're not getting sacked in that amount of time.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
But is it bad? Over the last couple of years, I was trying to dissect it. If your quarterback, Mike Thomas, and the entire offensive line gets hurt, does that affect your offense?
What did we think of Alontae Taylor overall today? Because there were some that obviously C.Olave beat him on that touchdown throw. Then he has the pick. And I think there were a few other things that we noticed. Was Alvin Kamara, when Alvin Kamara made that big play, was that against Alontae?
No, that was Zach Bond. But he gave up a catch on a crossing route. He was playing in the slot and definitely kind of like got frozen. You're at that point, and it was just kind of what we've been talking about on here about playing on the inside. You can either go one way or the other way, and the whole field's open in the slot, and you could just tell that he just wasn't used to having that to where he had to cover the whole field, and they got the cut, and he was a little slow on it. The contested the pass to Olave, it looked.
I didn't hate the coverage. Yeah.
It looked competitive. Just sometimes you get beat. The thing that I really liked the most, and it wasn't just because it was like a pick six. That's cherry picking almost, but just him defending a curl. I thought that was one of the routes where he had the most trouble last year, just because of his aggressiveness. He'd be going down the field, guy would cut it back, and he'd be too far up before he got back down. He sat and read this and jumped it, which I kind of thought showed patience and maturation of that aspect of his game a little bit. So I thought that was a really positive
obviously
moment.
What's interesting, I mean, you may have already said it, but just to make sure we're clarifying, when he was covering Olave, it was with the first stringers when he was playing on the outside.
Yeah, he was on the outside.
And then when he got his pick six, it was when he was then playing nickel with the third string. He was doing that throughout all of practice, 7-on-7's team and everything. Outside with the ones, nickel with the threes, because they're cross-training him. And so for that pick to come in nickel, that's obviously something he just started doing too.
Yeah, and that cross-training, I mean, they're not doing that with a lot of other guys. And I think it's okay that we're still seeing him start figuring out that role. And he's been with DA one-on-one, asking questions. It's not like he's getting frustrated and hanging his head. Like he's somebody who is actively trying to get this down so that he can be a two-position guy this year, because he sees the value in that and knows that, hey, I have more playing time if I can do both jobs well.
Are we making anything of Paulson and Adebo getting 0 slot snaps so far?
I'm okay with them seeing him just living in the cornerback position, because if that's where he's going to be best and they don't see an opportunity in him in the slot, I don't hate that, just because they have so much depth.
So are we assuming he's out of the
that's
slot?
the thing is I need to find out for sure, because tomorrow's practice we could see Paulson getting third team nickel slots. But it is interesting, and I think we mentioned it in the previous episode, that Ugo Amade, the veteran safety, has been working as the backup nickel behind Bradley Roby. So that you know, they're and have we ever seen Lonnie Johnson do it? I don't think we've seen him do it yet. But it lets you know that does, odd corner out doesn't automatically get that role. A safety could get the backup role behind Bradley Roby too.
Like if I had to make a guess today, like I'm leaning towards what I think Brooke was alluding to. Like I kind of feel like maybe he's out of it, but like maybe not. Maybe we see it tomorrow. But it feels like
Paulson is win the outside cornerback job or bust.
Yeah.
But that's also okay, because if Bradley Roby is your starting nickel, and they're saying something happens to Bradley Roby, then Alontae could be the starting outside guy. And they're like, all right, now we have to bring Adebo out on the field. Adebo, you go outside. Alontae, you go inside.
I'm on record like hating the idea of Adebo in the slot. So I'm not against outside or bust. I think is what it should be. It's just I don't know if we've seen enough to, you know.
We'll see. We'll see if he ever gets. He probably will get snaps there at some point, but they might be cursory snaps, like just in case of emergency. At this point, it doesn't appear to be something they're training him to do.
I thought it was good to see Traquan Smith back out there today. I wasn't sure what his availability would be after taking that hard hit on the ground, but seemed like he had a better day in practice too than he did in one.
Whole offense had a better day today. Yesterday was pretty bad, I thought, overall. So Yeah, I was actually kind of surprised to see him out there the way he left.
He fell pretty hard.
He did. So yeah, he didn't drop a bunch of passes. So that was, it would have been hard to go down from, and I'm not busting on a guy that got hurt. Like he was dropping passes before that. It would have been hard to go down from where he was on the first day.
Yeah, Cam Jordan wasn't there. I'm curious. I didn't quite know how to interpret Dennis Allen. Cam Jordan started practice yesterday. He did all of OTAs. And then he kind of disappeared yesterday, and then he wasn't out there at all today. And so I said, is that injury related? Because we were wondering, is there any possibility it could be contract related? And that's how it goes. I would say it's more old age related with Cam. He's going to be fine or something like that. And I'm like, does that mean he tweets something because he's old? But regardless, I don't think it's anything to worry about. But his absence was noticeable. He's a guy who didn't come back from yesterday.
Well,
I did see him walking.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there was anything going on.
Yeah.
I don't think it's anything at least visible that stands out.
Yeah.
He's still tweeting as much as he usually does on. So I mean, I don't know. I don't know if he would be the type of guy that would say it though.
I've got that back of my head. Is this one of those? Like, until I get my new contract, I'm not going to push this. Like, I don't think Cam's that kind of guy, especially since he participated in OTAs. But we saw that with DeMario a little last year. We saw it with CJ a little last year. Kind of I'll show up every day because I'm required to, but, So I was a little curious, but, I shouldn't put that on Cam because, like I said, his attendance has never been anything you doubt with him.
Okay, so we've seen 2 practices of mandatory minicamp. A third one is on the way, and then that's it until training camp. So ideally, what do we need to see in the third practice that we maybe haven't seen yet or would like to get better information on?
I don't feel like there's really any unsolved mysteries here. I feel like we went out here, we had a list of things we wanted to see, we kind of went down the list. I feel better about a lot of the questions we had, the ifs, ands, and maybes, but the one outstanding one for me still, and it's not going to get answered on day 3 of minicamp, I don't know who the linebackers really are at this point. I don't feel great about anyone behind DeMario Davis and Pete Werner. I feel a little bit better just because I feel like DeMarco Jackson has something, but I don't know if it's enough at this point. So they might have to go out and get somebody else still, I think, to fill in at that spot, bring some competition. But otherwise, I do feel like we have a better grasp on who the Saints might be later on this summer when they get back to training camp.
Yeah, you're right about that. I think for a minute there, we thought a competition was developing for that third role between Zach Bowen and DeMarco Jackson. Kind of feels like from what we've seen and heard, both of them were trending a little down this week. So no one's grabbing that role yet. You're right. I'm going through the roster while you ask that question, and I'm thinking, okay, Alvin, we liked what we've seen. Mike, we've loved what we've seen. Olave with the contested catch. It really is a really promising thing, everything we wanted to see from that DB competition. I mean, we still have not seen enough. I don't think we're going to see it, but we still haven't seen enough from the rookie defensive lineman. And it was kind of a disappointment today that the 2-minute drill was shortened so much because they had so few snaps. That would have been such an exciting series of play. You know what they did do, though, that we should have mentioned? So after Chris Olave's touchdown, they go for the 2-point conversion, which was part of the script, and the defense responds, and Peyton Turner, who was playing with the ones because Cam Jordan and Carl Granderson were both out today, actually got credit for the sack against Derek Carr, stopping them from a 2. So I would still love to be able to be watching practice and gathering more opinions on how Peyton Turner looks, how Brian Brzee looks, how Isaiah Foskey looks. So maybe they'll play the kind of snaps tomorrow where we can get some more impressions on those guys.
I think for me, and I think this gets into volume and just too many mouths to feed, but I would really like to see the connection between Carr and Juwan Johnson, and even to now Carr and Foster in the Saints offense. I would like to see more of that, but it's just so at this point, like it's you're probably hard to see that in mandatory minicamp, and honestly, we might not see a lot of it in training camp. That might be something we're gonna have to just see in games, maybe in the preseason, or even in the joint practices, which is helpful that the joint practices with the Texans are going to be in New Orleans, and maybe we'll be able to see a little bit more of those. I think when it goes on the road, we're at the liberty of the other team and what their rules are for the media. So who knows? We might see a lot of those things.
No, I think that's a good point, though. He has been quiet this week, and he was loud during OTAs, and since minicamp started, it's been kind of more other tight ends being involved. So yeah, that is something that I'd like to see him have a big day. That's going to be on the top of my list for tomorrow.
And we will also, for those people who are riveted by our daily coverage of kicking and punting competitions, they both went on the first day. They both had the day off today. They're both back tomorrow. One more kicking and punting session.
We will get some more numbers. Hopefully you guys will be in a spot to where you can see.
Yeah, we'll make sure.
The field goals either made or missed, or hopefully a coach can just slide that to one of you all. But We will have all that information from the third practice on the next episode of NewOrleans.Football. Tune in and we'll see you next time.